free elections in Kenya. You'll agree with me that the history of this country has been shaped, and the political violence has been shaped by the young people as the perpetrators and also as the participants of violence, electoral violence. We are approaching a very critical moment in our electoral calendar. That means that we will be having a referendum in the course of the year if the BBI bill goes through in Parliament, and also within a year we are likely to have the 2022 general elections. But the young people, being the majority, are actually going to be not only the majority of the voters, but also when we engage in elements of electoral violence, then young people really play a key role, which is actually very negative to our democracy. So today we want to have continue the conversation that we've been having on what role that the youth of this country can play in ensuring that we don't go or don't experience what we experienced in 27 years back. If we don't have this conversation, there's possibility of young people engaging in the similar form of violence is very high. And you can see and you know how detrimental that can be to our politics and also to our economy. So we want to have that conversation. I know you'll be different political parties. There is a role you can play in ensuring that you push your parties, ensure that even at the intra-party level, there are mechanisms that can be put in place to ensure that the conflicts that arise within the party can be sorted within the party without going to affect other agencies and institutions, including the IEBC or the judiciary for that matter. So we'll have Makore Wilson here, who is
sorry, my colleague Range is having connectivity issues. Let's just go straight into the presentation. Mr. Makore Wilson, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Good afternoon, young leaders. I'm Makore Wilson, and I'm going to take you through the role of young people in ensuring peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections. As Ranga said, we are in a critical situation at the moment in the country, and as we hope to have a referendum soon, we need to put the strategies as young people to ensure that we avert any possible violence in the country. Yes, please. So the objective of our meeting today is basically to identify the prevailing causes of political violence in the political context, and particularly during party primaries and by-elections in Kenya. We'll also assess the measures put in place by political parties that the youth could leverage on the effort of advocating for peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections, and also as a way of sensitizing the young leaders, who are the ones now we are talking to, you're the young leaders. We need to get sensitized on how we can come up with joint peace-building initiatives and rally behind the Kenyan youth to advocate for peace and cohesion. So I'll take you through the overview of our topic today. So as we all know, that the main purpose of going into election as the people of this republic is to elect our representatives. With the devolution, we elect people to go and represent in the county assembly and also the national assembly. But all this, a number of elections have been marred by violence, whereby the young people are the perpetrators of this violence, basically political violence, either during party primaries, by-elections, or general election. A case in point is the 1992 violence and the 2007 post-election violence. Somebody kindly mute. So in all this situation, you realize that the young people are taken advantage of because of the availability and the energy that they have. And the reason as to why you find that the young people are available to be used by those who are the initiates or behind this perpetration of political violence is because there is a high unemployment in the country, meaning that they are not committed anywhere, so they can easily be manipulated to engage in political violence. Another issue is the monetization of election. And considering there is lack of employment amongst the young people, anytime we monetize election, they realize that maybe there is an opportunity that can be able to make a livelihood. So they can easily be pushed by other politicians who might be interested in getting some advantage from that political violence. Maybe they're using that political violence to change the perception of the people towards the election. And you know, doing that one, the young people end up being misused because of lacking unemployment and also the fact that we have monetized the elections. So also the incapacity by the political parties to establish and strengthen the dispute resolution mechanism is another way that has also extended violence or advanced violence in our country. The internal party feuds and also Johnny Njuguna, we can request you to mute kindly. Hello. Yes, proceed. So you realize that the internal party disputes within our political parties, the fact that they have not come up with the mechanisms of ensuring that they resolve the disputes, that is also another challenge that the country is facing at the moment. We have also another narrative that has come up, that is the hustle and dynasty narrative, whereby the young people are being made to believe that the ones with the resources are the ones who have denied them jobs. And this is an issue that needs to be looked at, and you can see the impact of that has already been seen, whereby we didn't some violence or we didn't violence in Githurai 45. There's the Puma market, and also the various by-elections that have been conducted in the country recently, an example of Msambweni and also Matungu. Those are areas that we need to look at critically as young people in ensuring that we look for a way in which we can be able to focus and change this narrative of hustlers and tenacity, which is likely to divide our country. So we'll proceed. So despite all these issues, all the challenges that exist, we have a responsibility as the young leaders in our various political parties to play a role in preventing any possible election-related violence. And we can do this either by pushing for policy change within our parties, ensuring that the policies are structured in a way that they focus on employment creation for the young people and also socioeconomic development. We need also to carry out education among the young people in ensuring that the young people understand their political rights as enshrined in our Constitution of Kenya, especially Article 38, the rights, and as well as Article 36, which talks about the right to political association. So these are the things that the young people, we as leaders within political parties need to focus on when carrying out education, so that the young people in our country understands what are their political rights, how they should associate peacefully, and how they should work out to ensure that at least anytime we have an election, it's peaceful, safe, and free from any form of violence. There is also the need, or another way in which we can be able to ensure that we avoid violence as the young people within our political parties is by establishing structures for the participation of young people in governance within the party. By allowing young people to also have a voice within the governance of our political parties, then in that way, more will be motivated, because there is that motivation that I also need to be like somebody, and that one will give young people a chance to avoid being used as perpetrators of violence, but rather focus on coming up with ways or educating other youth to ensure that at least we have a country that is stable all the times. Anytime we have an election in the country, we don't experience any form of violence or unsafety in our country. So we all agree that political leaders therefore need to take full responsibility to strengthen the rule of law, address socioeconomic issues, and this one can include land distribution issues. We have inequality in resource distribution, and also poverty, which is very high in our country at the moment. and as well as allowing the civil society to participate in the shaping and implementation of the process. And this is process of strengthening the rule of law and also addressing the socioeconomic issues in our country. So I looked at the various strategies that have been put in practice by the young people in the country in ensuring that they bring about peaceful, safe, and free elections, which is free from any form of violence. And this one will deliberate on them at length. The first strategy, and I believe all these strategies are the ones that we need to put into practice or we can borrow from, are as well partner with the various organizations that have employed them in their push for peaceful, safe, and free elections in the country as young leaders within our political parties to ensure that at least we achieve what our goal is for this meeting today. So the first one is technology and youth empowerment. Hello? Are other people able to hear me?
Yes, Wilson, please proceed.
It's okay, thank you. So when we talk about technology and youth empowerment, this is a strategy that has been put in practice by a number of youth groups in ensuring that they advocate for peaceful, safe, and free elections. So we all agree that the use of ICT to advocate for peace is very important. And this one was applied by the Ushahidi platform, which gave youth a chance to monitor elections and reporting of irregularities and threat to violence. So this one kept the nation informed, and those who might be planning to perpetrate or to be perpetrators of violence were well alert that this one could have some impact on them when it comes to the following the rule of law, to follow on the perpetrators. Remember that we had the hashtag that was trending, the Tripless Youth campaign, and this one was initiated by a 23-year-old female university student, and the main focus was to advocate for the young youth or young people to vote political leaders capable of bringing about positive change, as well as promoting national unity and preventing the use of youth and ethnic violence. Another one that we had, which was also trending on Twitter and Instagram, that has been used by the young people, is Chill's campaign. And the main focus was to seek to promote peace among young people. And another example, outside of Ushahidi, that has given young people a chance to use ICT in advocating for peace, safe, and free elections, is the Universities and the Colleges Student Peace Association of Kenya, which basically was formed after the Garissa attack to preventing radicalization and promoting peace in institutions of higher learning in Kenya. And that one has been very active in bringing the young people together to avoid being radicalized as a way of promoting peace in the country. So that is something that we can as well borrow as young leaders within our political parties or partner with these kind of sessions through the use of ICT to push for such peaceful, safe, and free elections. Another area of focus, which we also need to borrow, and something that has also been applied in Kenya, is the dialogue, youth and dialogue and reconciliation. When youth engage in dialogue and reconciliation, we all agree that dialogue and reconciliation are essential elements of peace building across the different societies. And in our case as Kenya, we can't be an exception. Young people or young Kenyans have incorporated activities that promote dialogue and reconciliation in their peace advocacy across local communities. We'll look at the organization that has employed this one in the advancement of peaceful, safe, and free elections. So dialogue and reconciliation are particularly crucial in the Kenyan context, given our multi-layered nature of security challenges, especially when we look at the intersection of ethnicity, political, religious, and gender identities. An example of the former included the Peace for Africa and Economic Development. And this initiative used the FANACA program to empower youth through business incubation, training, and the provision of small grants in order to reduce their vulnerability to political violence. And remember, when I was starting, I stated that the reason as to why the young people are involved in perpetration of political violence is because they're readily available and the energy that they have. And the reason as why they're available is because of unemployment. But this organization, the Peace for African Economic Development, thought it better to come up with a Fanaka program, at least to ensure that the young people are committed in engaging in meaningful activities that may not be readily available to be used by the perpetrators or the people behind those perpetration. Yeah. So we also have the Kenya Youth Peace Platform, which is a nationwide community platform for peace and civil society actors. And that one was founded in 2014, and the main vision was to promote a common vision and synergize the efforts of all Kenyan youth peace actors to tackle underlying causes of conflict, and as well to create a platform for sustained interactions, shared experiences, concerted effort, and seamless coordination of the Kenya youth peace actors. So this is just a way that was bringing the Kenya youth peace actors so that they can put their effort and experiences and they put a concerted effort to ensure that at least they push for a peaceful, safe, and free Kenya when it comes to elections. Another example that I'll give also is the Kericho County Youth Bunge Network. We have the Langata Youth Network, and the Langata Youth Network was mostly motivated by the successful experience of violence linked to elections and the politics and the intergroup clashes in Kibra. The main vision of the Langata Youth Network was that of a free society based on equal opportunities for the development and empowerment of youth. Another area or strategy that has been put into use by the young people in this country, and which we can as well borrow as the young leaders, is the youth sports and peace building. In Kenya and many other African countries, or even in the world, we all agree that the youth policies and youth development activities have always been anchored on sports, voluntarism, service to the country in the aftermath of independence. That is exactly the area we focus on much after gaining independence as a country, and even in many African countries. Sport-related activities and games have become the entry point for reaching different categories of young people, especially male youth, or even ladies. Nowadays, most of them engage in sports. So you can't really say there is only the male alone, but this one is inclusive. This has informed why and how youth-led peace advocacy in Kenya has also sought to leverage the youth sports nexus. So that means sports activities have been seen as a way in which you can easily reach out to the young people and be able to advance or advocate for peace, safety, and also non-violence when it comes to elections. An example of an organization that utilized that opportunity or that strategy is the Tegla Lorope Peace Foundation. Tegla was a renowned Kenyan athlete who established the Tegla in 2003 as a platform for using sports to promote peace through social outreach and cohesiveness between warring groups in Kenya. So our focus was only to the warring groups in Kenya, and this foundation basically focused on the places such as Kapenguria, Tana River, and Karamoja. The foundation organizes peace forums and the disarmament activities between and among warring communities and the listed communities. And this is basically to ensure that at least these people, when they're engaging in the peace races, they can be able to share ideas and also work on a way they can be able to coexist peacefully and push for free and nonviolent elections. And this is the one area that I believe we as young leaders as well can take advantage of, go out there and engage the young people through sports, because I believe we have areas that by particular political parties have strong support, and that's an area that they can take advantage of, and also around the country, because political parties are expected to have presence in every part of the country. We also have the peace tournament activity. The main aim of this one was at building of peace within able and talented young people in Kenya through soccer competition. And this one basically focused in Western Kenya and Nyanza. It was basically to bring the young people together in competitions, but this is also another way to bring them together to coexist and be able to work towards realizing a peaceful, safe, and free elections. Because this one makes them feel like they belong to one country, and the one people are their brothers and sisters, and they need not to engage in any violence that could destabilize their country. The project involves competitors in learning peace building methodologies, citizens' rights, and how to build a sustainable peace amongst themselves and the entire communities. So this one is an inclusive way whereby when young people come together and the moment they learn how to sustain peace, they extend this one to their own communities, and therefore communities end up coexisting harmoniously. The last strategy under this area of strategies that have been put in practice, or the one that we can be able to borrow a leaf from as young leaders, is the youth and the use of art, music, and drama in peace building. So we all agree that the Kenyan youth has or have been known to respond and relate to local music. Most of the young people respond positively to local music, and there's a way in which it associates with them, as it often speaks directly to their lived, marginal, socio-economic, and political experiences that are often left out in broader national governance processes. Some of the documentary cases of using art and entertainment to highlight the role of the music, for example, art or drama in bringing about peaceful, safe, and free elections. We can talk about the hip hop, which was in addressing memory and empowerment in informal settlements in Kenya. For example, we had the one that was the Uko Fulani Mau Mau, which basically was engaging a discussion on identity as well as how past Mau Mau grievances remain relevant in Kenyan contemporary social, economic, and the political circumstances. Another way is by the use of language, such as the Sheng. The use of Sheng, for example, in crafting most of the lyrics further adds to this appeal as it unites youth despite the ethnic makeup. So you realize that the use of Sheng in crafting the lyrics in the music, there is a way in which it unites the young people, because this one takes them away from their ethnic makeup. And an example, for example, you remember in April 2012, Kenyans in Nairobi walk up to murals across walls in the strategic streets in Nairobi. And most of them were denouncing Kenyan politicians ahead of the 2013 elections. And the focus was avoiding the leaders they want. And another example is the Picha Mtaani. This one was led by Boniface Mwangi, was a youth. It's a youth-led national reconciliation initiative. It was formed with the support of United Nations Development Programs in Kenya for the purpose of engaging Kenyan youth in finding lasting solutions to attaining peace and reconciliation and healing the nation. We have the Maisha Initiative Kenya. This one was based in Nakuru, and it was founded in 2013 following the scale of violence and losses experienced in Rift Valley, basically Nakuru, as a result of the post-election violence of 2007, so 2008. So Maisha Initiative Kenya basically focused on using music, art, theater, and technology, and other creative skills as tools for communication and socio-economic empowerment of youth by creating platforms for employment and employment opportunities. And remember, the main reason, as I mentioned, as why young people may engage in this one, political violence, lack of employment, and availability. So this one realized that if we come up with a way of creating platform for employment opportunities as we preach peace and harmony among the young people, then automatically we'll have ensured that we have a safe, free, and peaceful election. So the Maisha initiative also used the tools for social mobilization, worked on awareness creation. They also engaged in communication by involving the relevant platforms of communication, entertainment, and advocacy for peaceful coexistence among youth and the broader society. So apart from focusing on the youth, through the activities of engaging in the creation of awareness, social mobilization, and also communication and entertainment, they could attract the whole society or a broader society in subscribing to the idea of working towards a peaceful, safe, and free election in the country. So another thing that we look at is the causes of political violence. Remember when we talked about the objectives of the meeting, this was the second point. So we have to look at as well, what are the causes of political violence in our country, or what has always been causing political violence in the country. So identification of this one, of the causes of political violence is sometimes problematic, but when we look at it from the perspective of it being a societal feature, gives the perception that political violence is unavoidable. That is the perception that we can get. But we as young people, we need to take a divergent view from that one and focus on what we can do to ensure that we avert the various causes of political violence to bring about harmonious coexistence, peaceful, free, and fair elections. So the first point, or what we consider to be consent to political violence or conditions that consent to political violence are the strong executive powers, whereby gaining political power is seen as a struggle for survival and manipulation of ethnicity. This has been a case in Kenya since independence, something that we all agree with, that the support and resistance to political leaders of the country have often followed ethnic lines. When forming governments, for example, some political leaders have rewarded and ensured advantage to individuals from supportive ethnic groups. So this one of rewarding and also ensuring advantage to individuals from supportive ethnic groups is the reason that young people may as well engage. Is the reason as to why young people may as well engage in political violence when they are pushing to have one from their ethnic group to ascend to power, because they believe once someone is acquires the executive powers, automatically their ethnic group will have to get the advantages as well as be able to acquire positions and rewards from the government. The working report, for example, notes how various leaderships or various executives who have happened to acquire the executive positions in the country have given appointments to political officers to their supporters, with jobs in the public and the military also being given to their supporters. And the perpetrators as well allowed to this political leadership were never prosecuted in any way. That means people engage in perpetration of violence, knowing that because we are associated or we have the linkage or the political executive may become from an area or we are close to that one, then it means they may never be prosecuted. And this one motivates the young people also to engage in any types of violence, because they know as long as the other people engaged in this and they were never prosecuted, then with us as well, we can be able to engage in it and no prosecution will take place. The European Union Monitoring Commission noted that in most cases, abuses did not receive an appropriate response from the police and the judiciary. And there was therefore impunity towards perpetrators. So when, for example, or in the most recent election violence erupted in, for example, 2007, which is the most recent that we can vividly remember, perpetrators had a good reason to assume that also this time politically motivated violence will go unpunished, because when remember those that engaged in political violence in 1992, that was the first election after the repeal of Section 2A of the Constitution, the then Constitution, they were never punished. So this one could motivate those who engaged in the political violence or post-election violence of 2007, because they knew even if they engage in that way, they'll never be prosecuted. So far, they have not been mistaken. I believe they were right, because that one never happened. And it's something that we're still working on as a country to see if really we can have justice delivered to other people who are affected. So the working reports also concluded that out of the 1,000 homicides related to election violence, only 19 were prosecuted. You can imagine from 1,000 homicide-related election violence, only 19 have so far been prosecuted. That can tell you that still we have a challenge that needs to be worked on. So the evolution of executive powers has also strengthened this, where governance position is sought for along ethnic or clan lines. You find that when you're talking about executive powers, we now go back to the counties. And this one has brought now the division, whereby we have the clan issues, we have the tribal arrangements. So whereby if a governor comes from a particular clan, these people have to push, do anything they can, even if it means engaging in violence, to ensure that a person from their own clan ascends to power. So another cause of political violence is the rule of law problems and the institutionalization of political violence. So the working report as well noted that the balances associated with democracy are very weak in Kenya. That is to say, the strong executive powers are also said to circumvent transparency and checks and balances, meaning that the executive powers or the strong executive powers have in one or the other interfered with the transparency and checks and balances. That means it may interfere with how the legislatures conduct their business, the judiciary, and this is also a challenge that can as well erupt or bring about political violence in the country, thereby decreasing the likelihood that the executive or political supporters of the incumbent regime are held accountable for political violence. So this one has motivated individuals in various parts of government, whether in the civil service, the judiciary, and even parliament, understand that irrespective of the law, the executive arm of government determines what happens. Therefore, the rule of law has thus tended to be put aside in context of political competition. So we tend during political competition, we don't take the rule of law seriously, or rather we assume that it does not exist because of how it ends up being interfered by the political executive. This is likely to have led to the presumption for next general election, generational perpetrators that are committing act of violence in a context that relates to political competition will remain not accounted for. You can imagine that one. That is a very big challenge that we need to work on as young people, so that at least we can be able to be observers or be able to respect the rule of law, and also the institutions that have been put in place to ensure that they bring about better governance for a country. Another cause of political violence in a country is the social economic causes. That one will look at the poverty, unequal distribution of resources, and land issues. So, for example, when you look at the widespread poverty, and we all agree that the poverty level in our country is very high, the unequal distribution of resources, high unemployment rates, and land disputes have often been pointed to as the main cause or root causes of political violence in Kenya. That is whereby you find that the poverty motivates people to engage in violence, and also unemployment level whereby the young people realize that they're idle, they don't have anything, so that anybody who wants to spearhead political violence to their own advantage can easily use these young people because of being idle to engage or to be perpetrators of these types of violence during elections or party primaries or during by-elections. So therefore seems to be a sense among some observers that agents of political violence in Kenya are fundamentally dissatisfied with the social and economic conditions of life. So when people are dissatisfied with the social and economic conditions of life, automatically engaging in political violence is something that they take as a priority because they see that as the only way they can be able to gain a livelihood. Kenya has an estimated 2 million unemployed youths, and that means it has been growing, so it must be more than that at the moment. Joining a gang may be, for some, be seen as a way of life. Remember, I mentioned that dissatisfaction because of social and economic conditions of life can make the young people think of engaging in gang activities because that is the only way they see as if they can be able to gain a livelihood. And this one increases their possibilities of being vulnerable to be used for violence. Members are sometimes promised repayment for their activities. You may find some political leaders secretly or in one or the other engaging the young people who are employed to engage in perpetration with a promise that it will be paid. And somebody who does not have money, who has not had a meal for some time because of the situation of lacking employment, that means a person, when is approached by somebody with money and the promise for a payment, they may easily engage in a political violence knowing that they'll be able to get something that will be able to keep them living. Participation in political violence can be said to be furthered by a widespread sense of dissatisfaction, the distribution of wealth. Distribution of wealth in our country, for example, is extremely unequal in Kenya, though there has been a struggle by the leadership to ensure that at least we have a balance with the advent of revolution, but still is facing a number of challenges. And this is an area that we as the young people can also come in and push for equality in distribution of resources from the national level and even at the county level. Because sometimes you may focus at the national level, then end up forgetting about the county level, whereby much resources have also been devolved to. So we have also the land issue, which I mentioned under the social economic causes, whereby since independence, the Kenyan governments have continuously allocated these areas of resources or the land to shifting supporters for patronage purposes. Moreover, because of colonial laws which were never fundamentally changed, there are no provisions for collective land rights, thus complicating ownership for communities that have traditionally been pastoralist. So we adopted our laws or land ownership laws from the colonial regime. That means we did not change much to ensure that we identify a way of sharing land. And this one has always brought the issue of political leaders giving to their clients or the people who have the patronage client relationship with. And this one in one or the other alienates the people who have been pastoralists in Kenya. You mean pastoralists move from here and there, and then they did not specifically say this is our land. And this one or the other can erupt violence, whereby you find pastoralists fighting for land every now and then to have their animals get to a place to feed. Another issue that causes violence or political violence in Kenya is the weakness of electoral management bodies. For example, when you're going to party primaries, you realize, for example, every political party has a way in which it conducts election, but the electoral management bodies are very weak, meaning they cannot really be able to deliver credible and accountable elections. And this one or the other affects or advances the issue of young people engaging in political violence, because when they realize there is something not being done right, or the electoral management bodies are not doing things as per the law, and many other politicians who feels like they are aggrieved by that one, they may end up engaging the young people in being perpetrators of political violence. So that is something that we need to look at to ensure that at least as young leaders within our political parties, we push for the strengthening of electoral management bodies, as well as the bodies that are entitled to carry out elections in the country. So we have the political systems based on patronage and the clientelism. That is to imply that the citizens may engage in violence to protect their patrons, which is advanced by the benefits they enjoy from this relationship. This is whereby, for example, you have informal relationship, which supersedes the formal institutional formation of a country. This patron-client relationship, which is very prevalent in the Kenyan context, involves the exchange of goods and services for political support, which can sometimes take advantage of unemployed young people who act as the perpetrators of violence. So that is something that we need to work on as well. We have the presence of International Election Observation Mission, which has mixed effects on electoral violence. So the International Election Observation Mission, sometimes when they give their views on the status of election, for example, when they come up and tell us that the election has been rigged, automatically the young people who are aligned to a particular candidate who they feel like an election was rigged and it did not favor them, they may end up going to the streets and engage in violence simply because they have been told that the manner in which election was conducted was not in compliance with the law. So this one can happen, for example, when you have elections at our county level, at the national level. And this is something that we need to work on to ensure that at least our entities that have been given the mandate by the Constitution of Kenya to ensure that we have free and fair elections also work and do their job excellently. So we also look at the measures in place by political parties or the ones that we can be able to utilize to ensure that we bring about peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections. And these I mentioned a number of them. We have the victim redress and the confronting socioeconomic causes of political violence. So under this one, under victim redress and confronting socioeconomic causes of political violence, we look at the transitional justice discourse, which often emphasizes on the need to redress victims in the aftermath of gross human rights violation. There is the international standards which recognize the victim's rights for reparation and stipulate how reparation can take a variety of forms. That includes, but not limited to, financial compensation for harm suffered, restitution, and the different forms of rehabilitation. So we can rehabilitate the victims of violence, can go through compensation. There's a number of ways or various means in which that one can be done, but just to mention but a few. And recent accounts tend to extend victims' rights and often formulate transitional justice process, such as criminal trials as the right of victims to see perpetrators brought to account. So anytime we have our country engages in trials of criminals who engage in political violence or as perpetrators of political violence, then automatically the victims, when they realize this one has been done and the perpetrators have been in prison or been punished, they feel like they have truly been served justice. So from a preventive perspective, we can also say it's important that Kenya address the questions of how victims of political violence can be redressed. The question must be approached not only in terms of the most recent election violence, but we can also look at the wider problem where groups that have historically been exposed to political violence or marginalized receive reparations. Still on this one, it requires also a future-oriented approach where the key objectives can be or could be to ensure that individuals and the groups who have historically been subjected to injustices become less marginalized. So reducing marginalization amongst people who have in a way be aware. For example, we can do this by increasing access to education, the healthcare, and land accessibility. Reconciliation between communities can be important for preventing future political violence. This one is ensuring that at least people coexist harmoniously. All these people who have been engaged or were affected by violence, they are brought together to work towards a reconciliation path that makes them live as neighbors and also coexist as one people belong to one country. So another thing that or the measure that has been put in place, or the one that you can be able to borrow from as young leaders, is the legal and institutional reforms. So we have mostly or predominantly focused on trial and punishment as the response that can end impunity and establish or reinforce the rule of law. This may lead to the neglect for other structural changes that are profound for altering those conditions that allow disrespect for the rule of law. So as young people, we need to push for the legal and institutional reforms. This one can be by holding accountable perpetrators of the recent election violence. And this one should go hand in hand, not only by holding them accountable, but this one should also go hand in hand with pushing for the reform process that aims at transforming institutions into being more accountable, transparent, efficient, and rights-oriented entities. We have also the trial and punishment. You realize that most of the debate in our country have revolved around or have always been about to address political violence in Kenya by prosecuting and punishing responsible agents for the violence surrounding, for example, the 2007 elections. And as the Human Rights Watch noted, as Kenya to overcome the legacies of political violence, it has only two options or two choices. We either take the justice path or impunity. And at this one, they argue that criminal justice for the most recent election violence is crucial for ending a culture of impunity in Kenya. We also had the Kenyan National Dialogue and Reconciliation and a variety of observers who have always noted or who noted that the importance of using criminal justice to prevent political violence from recurring is something that we should all be able to give priority and support by all means. These parties recognized that their final goal is the achievement of a sustainable peace, stability, and justice in Kenya through the rule of law and respect for human rights. That means those who have been engaged in activities that bring about violence during elections, before elections, they should be taken through trials and punishment, because this one makes the citizen of the country learn to respect human rights and also be observant of the rule of law. These parties agreed that reaching this effective and expeditious investigation of gross and systematic violation of human rights, and that those found guilty are brought to justice. We have another report by the WACI. This is called the WACI report. The WACI Commission, for example, set up by the parties highlighted the role of impunity as a cause of the election violence and recommended the establishment of a special tribunals with specific jurisdictions over the election violence and a judicial staff made up of both Kenyans and foreigners. The WACI report further requested the parties to reach an agreement on establishment of such tribunals and put forward a bill in Parliament. This was made under threat that the failure to comply within a timeline of 60 days after the WACI report was made public would result in a list of names with high-profile Kenyans, which the WACI Commission suspected to be responsible for the violence will be handed over to the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court. So these are the things that we're trying all the ways to push to ensure that at least the perpetrators of the political violence are put in trial and also punished for the acts they're engaged in, which brought about the disability in our country. And this is something that the young people within our political parties, we can be able to push, because political parties represent the interests of the people, and they are there to push for this interest, ensure that are represented in the government structure. So we can be able to work on this one as young people and ensure that at least we have a peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections in our country. We have the transitional justice as a framework for analysis of preventive measures to political violence in Kenya. So the transitional justice I had mentioned before when I was looking at the victim redress. So to avoid the recurrence of political violence and other forms of mass atrocity, society must confront these legacies. So we as the people must confront these legacies through legal and quasi-legal methods or measures. And this one was in practice, or it was applied in the early 1990s, whereby the activists and scholars alike increasingly began to advocate for the need to retrospectively confront perpetrators of state-sponsored violence, whereby those state-sponsored violence, or the perpetrators of those state-sponsored violence, were confronted and brought to book so that they can be able to offer justice to the victims. For these observers, truth commissions, this is the area of focus in bringing about transitional justice. The truth commissions are the ones that we can focus on as they are seen as responsible or as a response enabling enhanced roles of victims, reconciliation, and peace in our country. Another strategy that has been put in practice, or that you can be able to borrow from as young people, is the coordination of activities to avoid overlap and identify gaps to peace building. We realize that every political party has an internal dispute tribunal mechanism, and this one can be put into practice, whereby because of the evolution and whereby we have political parties have offices in various areas in the country, they can be able to coordinate to ensure that they reach out to the young people and they push for a peaceful election or work towards a way of identifying and also filling the gap to peace building. And this is an area that we as young people, through the leadership of the parties, you can push for this one, through policy changes to ensure that at least we have a policy that advocates for this one and allows the young people to be engaged in such activities through a well-coordinated platform. There is also finding the right balance between deterrence and the confidence building. This whereby, for example, when it comes to party primaries or by-elections or even general elections, it should be, or we should be able to focus or push for having the presence of security agencies within the areas that we are engaging elections, and also work towards building confidence by the people towards the security agencies. And you realize that this one can be a challenge sometimes, whereby you realize that some activities or some violence are committed in the presence of the police officers, simply because the parties they are aligned to has instructed them not to respond in one way or the other. And this is something that we can be able to come with the police interventions to ensure that at least we find a balance between the deterrence and also build confidence to our security agencies as young people through the political parties that we represent. We have also the continuous, this one can be having a presence of a policy for electoral violence management, especially monitoring and voter-centered strategies. So we need to have a way, for example, remember when I mentioned about Ushahidi, which provided a platform that the young people could monitor the election results or electioneering process and be able to report through the platform that had been provided by the Ushahidi. And this is something that we can also utilize as young people to ensure that at least when we're having the by-elections, party primaries, we come up with those methods of monitoring so that the young people can be able to feel like they're party to the exercise. And also we need to carry out education so that we inform the young people about their right to political association as per Article 36 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, and as well as their political rights as per Article 38, and also educate them on how to push together as young people for a government to implement Article 55 of the Constitution of Kenya, which gives or which requires the government to take action to offer education and as well employment for the young people, because by so doing, we'll ensure that the unemployment level is reduced in the country and the young people have an area whereby they are committed to make a livelihood, and hence they may not be too idle or more available to be used by those who plan violence. That is the end of my presentation. We welcome the questions and also discussions. If you have something, you can add or a question. We'll really be grateful to respond. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Wilson, for the wonderful presentation. It's well prepared out and well articulated, and we appreciate you for that. So now I open the discussions to the plenary. We'll be able to take any questions, any suggestions, any opinions that the participants have. So this goes out to everybody. If you have a contribution you'd like to make towards the discussion on the role of the young people in ensuring peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections, please just use the raise hand button on your tab and I'd be able to get to you. Then we'd be able to give you a chance to talk. Alternatively, if you're not able to verbally project your opinion or your questions, just you could write it down in the chat box and I'd be able to get through to that as well. So for starters, I see Stella Opio's hand is up. Stella, go ahead and mute and talk.
Good evening. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Stella.
Stella, mine is a question to the presenter.
Mm-hmm.
He's talked of youth being unemployed. It's something that we've had for quite a long time. But what are some of the strategies that he has come up with on how to create these platforms for employment opportunities? What are some of those employment opportunities that youths can tap on? And number two, as according to his presentation, I've noted that we have a lot of youth splinter groups. We have one in Kibera, one in Langata, one where, and these groups hazijulikani. Mi kama hiyo ya Langata na Kibera nimeisikia leo. And I know there are many youths who do not know of the existence of such groups. So what is it doing, or what are they doing as an institution, or what are those splinter groups doing, those youth groups doing, to make sure that they reach out to those at mashinani? Because you cannot only reach out to the youth in Langata, and yet youth in Madare will come to Langata to beat you or fight you, or youth from Madare North will be sent to Langata to fight you. So, and in my opinion, is that these many splinter groups are not helping us as youths, because every group has an objective that they're looking into, and those objectives are only geared towards reaching out to the youth that maybe wako na smartphone or wanapatikananga town or wanapatikana hapo Langata. Na je, yule youth anaishi Mathare, haezi afford smartphone, haezi afford kila kitu, anangoja hiyo tao ya politician aende arushe mawe ndiye ajikimu nayo. How will this whatever the group is standing for reach them? Thank you for now.
Thank you. Thank you, Stella, for your question. I think we can take around 2 or 3 at a go, and then we get back to Wilson to respond to them. So in that spirit, I see Njerin Njoroge's hand up. Njerin Njoroge, please go ahead and give your input. Stella, please mute.
Thank you so much.
Njerin Njoroge, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the presenter. It was a very good presentation and some very good insight on the challenges and way forward for the youth. He mentioned about the legal reforms, and I feel as youth and young leaders, we are not actively involved in policy making and reforms, and even our voices as we raise them, as we articulate our issues, there seems to have a wall, or rather basically a wall that makes sure that the voices of women are restricted, or not women, youth are restricted, and they are not really articulated on paper, and we don't see our recommendations being on the policy documents for implementation. Even as the policies are being implemented, we haven't seen youth being involved in monitoring and evaluation. So as we talk about legal reforms, it's important for us as youth to push for accountability and transparency, and most importantly, monitoring and evaluation of these policies to see if they are really transforming the youth, if they are really practical, and if they have impacted the youth in terms of leadership. You've also mentioned about the business and youth being being involved in businesses, and I believe the greatest challenge for youth it's the taxes. Maybe as we look at the BBI and some of its recommendation in the tax holiday that it has promised the youth, in my opinion, that one is not practical, and yet those are some of the goodies that are pegged on youth so that they can support some of these policies that come on board. So the main issue is taxation and unfriendly business environment. So as we try to dialogue in this space, it's important for us to maybe push for reforms to have a friendly business environment for the youth, and even the financing of the youth. Let us have institutions that are really supporting the youth so that they are able to empower themselves and actively be involved in politics, so that we don't have a cycle of poverty where youth keep getting handouts, and it's just another cycle of the same thing, election after election. Thank you so much. I submit.
Thank you, Njerin Njoroge. There was a bit of background noise on your end, but I hope Wilson was able to capture your input. Thank you for that. We'll take one more from Brian Githinji, and then we'll hand it back to Wilson. Yes, to Wilson to respond. Brian Githinji, you can unmute and go ahead.
Okay, hello everyone. Okay, my presentation when it comes to violence is people say that the end justifies the means. If we have really built a culture of violence, then that is what you're going to really, okay, that is what works. And then the politician, what is interested in is, can I really be able to achieve my goal or my end? So it normally starts with the political culture. So what I would like the presenter to really come up and tell us, how can we really change this political culture in Kenya in terms that we compete in terms of ideology, and what you can really deliver in terms of your competence. That is my take.
Thank you, Brian. Wilson, you could respond to those before we take the next round of questions.
Thank you very much for those questions. I'll start with the first question from Salo Pio, whereby she asked about us, or having talked about unemployment being the reason as why young people are involved as perpetrators of political violence, and asked about what have we done to provide opportunities of employment. So this one I put it to the young leaders within political parties. When I talked about working towards policy change, because as political parties, you have a platform whereby you can be able to push for policy change. And when we are there as young leaders, I believe the main focus is to push the government to implement Article 55 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which talks about government action in giving education or providing education for the young people and also employment. So that is something you can capitalize on as the young people. So that one I put it as a challenge to the young people coming from various political parties. You have a platform, kindly use it to ensure that at least we have that article implemented. So you also, Stella Opio also talked about the youth groups, like the Kericho County Youth Bunge, Telangata Youth Initiative, having no presence nationwide. So, you know, in a youth group is formed to respond to specific issues. So like those one, like the Kericho, for example, the Kericho Youth Bunge was formed purposely to resolve the issues or to bring about peace building and reconciliation within that area. But now, we as the young people within political parties, whereby we have a broader platform where you can be able to reach out to the youth, because parties have presence in all parts of the country, then we can utilize that chance of working towards peace building and also engaging the young people through education, so that we can work towards having a peaceful, free, and fair elections. That's how I can respond to your question, but I leave it also to leaders from various political parties, the youths, to ensure that at least I implement that one, because it's something they can really take advantage of by having that platform. On the issue by Njoroge, that was a comment. I support her that really we need to have monitoring and evaluation that is involving, that allows the youth also to be party, and ensuring there is accountability and a transparency in our governance structure. That one I concur with you. Yes.
Rosa Wangu would kindly suggest that you mute your mic. Rosa Wangu. Wilson, please proceed as I try to get in touch with her. Sorry for the inconvenience.
So another one was by Brian Githinji on political culture, so that we vote leaders based on political ideology. As young leaders from various political parties, you'll agree with me that Kenya as a country, or our political parties, lacks a clear ideology that the young people can subscribe to. So that is still a challenge, but it's a challenge that we can, as well as young people, take advantage of and come up with a way in which we can push for parties to have an ideology that people can subscribe to. So that is something that we can do. But as we stand at the moment, as you have put it clearly, Brian Githinji, we do not have, our political parties do not have a clear ideology. Because you realize that we have around more than 72 political parties registered in the country. Some of them are just dormant. We can hear over very few of them. But those others that are dormant, they only come up during election periods. So we take them as if they are doing business. But we can people too, as young people, to revive these parties, structure a way and create an ideology that we can push the young people to subscribe to, so that we can be identified by a particular ideology as a party. Therefore, I concur with you that the manner in which we define our political culture defines on how we're going to respond to elections. Thank you. Everyone feels answered?
Thank you, Wilson. I think we'll take the next round of questions. Sela, I see your hand is up again. Brian Githinji as well. I'm not sure that it's up from the first time or whether you want to be given another chance to speak. So let's start with Sela and then we can go to Brian.
Thanks, Tracy.
Sela Opio, please.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Mine is not a question as of now. Mine is, you know, I like being real. We are here with a very huge number of unemployed youth, especially after the COVID-19, the first wave that kila mtu alivutwa kazi. Now, no one has done anything about it. We are moving towards an election in 2022. You don't expect, even if you tell us as young people in political leadership to start influencing policies, and we need to be real. It's going to be hard to start influencing policies now that we are moving towards an election, and there are a lot of like now we just have a referendum. We don't know whether it will be coming or not. No one is actually talking about the youth, even those who are in the positions of those who can easily influence the policies we're talking about. They are not doing anything as at now. We need to be real. Let us come up with things that will help us avoid chaos in the next coming election, that is in 2022. There's the presenter, he's done a very good presentation, by the way. But then anasema we as the youth are in position to influence policies, to enable youth to get employed. We should look at the timeline. We have an election next year, we have a looming referendum, and then we have quite a very huge number of unemployed youth. So influencing policies now is not going to be the solution to even help them, to help the youth not to be used during election malpractices. Number two, hiyo ni kama ameteleza ulimi kidogo, but amesema political parties are dormant and only a few are active and some of them become active towards election. You do not expect us, all the 72 political parties, to have the same level playing field when only 2 are being funded as of now. Only 2 political parties get that fund. All these other ones are not being funded by those. So you don't expect us to tufanye hiyo kelele hizo party mbili kubwa zinafanya the same level. That's why he might think in his own sense that we are inactive. But for us, we are active in our own sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Sela. Brian Githinji, would you like another chance to speak? Okay, let's go to Makrin Thiga. Makrin Thiga, go ahead.
Thank you, Tracy, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for the... Hi, Tracy. Hello? Hello.
Sorry, I think we're losing each other. Makrin Tiga, please go ahead. Sela, I'll give you a chance to talk again. Makrin, please go ahead.
Anyone hearing me?
Yes, Makrin, please go ahead.
Okay. So thank you for the presentation. And thank you for the opportunity to just, it's not a question, it's kind of a concern. And my concern is youth. I'm asking myself, why do youth fight now that we are talking about election violence and other things? And I'm asking myself, why do youth fight? Apart from being incited, youth fight because they feel sidelined. They also feel they are not included. Those are also some things that make youth fight during election. They feel they are not included. They feel sidelined. Apart from being incited, apart from incitement from the political people. And there is a debate that is going on, that is still going on. And now that we are, next year is a general election. And the debate is it that I'm seeing in so many forums and platforms. Would you, would we like support the laws of that law that the youth, if youth does not have a diploma or a degree, will not go for leadership position? And that is what I am seeing much being talked on. And many are saying that because if we close doors for just those who have their degrees to lead us, and many of them might not be even having the political interest, and maybe those that do not have the degrees might be having the passion and the interest to lead. So it will be giving this class that is up there a second option to maybe for leadership. That's something that they do not have, the passion that they do not have. And so they will not even deliver how it's like how it's supposed to be. And so I'm like, because so many youth are out here, and sometimes we do not judge. Some are not, they do not have those degrees because our education system, education institutions are very expensive. Some parents are not able to afford the degrees and masters and even those diplomas for their kids. The money to take them to these higher learning institutions. And now we are giving ourselves, or we are in the mercy of those who are learned, and maybe they don't have that passion. And I'm like, now this is a kind of a conflicting issue. And at least mine was not just a question, it's just some few of insight and observation. And because it's kind of if it's bringing some heat right now, what about next year? Maybe when we'll be feeling, everyone will be like going to the IBC, why are you sidelining me? And I have that passion, I have the quality to lead. Just because I do not have a degree, I cannot go for parliamentary seat. Just because I do not have a diploma, I will not go for MCA seat. And I have that passion. I have the interest of people at the ground at heart, because I know my area. And I'm able to read, I'm able to present my people, because yes, there must be a level of education, but if that high is going to make us lose or to sideline youth, it might bring some heat. So as we talk, can we just think in that line, and maybe we can have some few issues or few thoughts about that?
Thank you, Makrin. Thank you for that. Before I give the floor to Wilson to give his input on what has been said. Selaupio, I think you wanted to talk again. Go ahead. Selaupio, you wanted another chance to talk. Please go ahead. Okay. Wilson, please go ahead and give your response on the issues that have just been raised.
Thank you very much, Makrin Tiga, for that good response and suggestion. I also believe the issue of education, it comes to acquiring a political office. That is something that I've seen bring a lot of, or has brought a hot debate in the country at the moment. But, you know, when you look at our constitution, you know, before that one was not specified, whereby we had a number of people who even did not have even a degree or even a diploma acquiring positions of power. But, you know, we are going through a referendum whereby we have a chance to decide on this, and we can see our county assemblies has approved, and most of them approved. Clear understanding that is an area that is going to affect them, and I've seen most of them going to school. But I believe because of the duties they're going to undertake and the people they're going to represent, they need to have education. That is my thinking, which you can as well give your view on that. I think education should be prioritized. Yes, please.
Sorry, you go ahead.
The issue of aspirants having a degree, personally, I believe it's something that we should work on and as well support fully. Because, you know, these are the people we sending to parliament to make laws for us, legislate for us, and represent us. So they need to have an understanding of the laws they're going to pass in parliament and the impact those laws are going to have on us. So personally, I believe that is correct. We should have that one as an area whereby we should support fully on a degree being a requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson, for your input on that. Before I give either Stella or Makrin a chance to speak again, is there any other person who wants to contribute to the discussion so that we're not closing out anybody else who would like to contribute? Okay, Stella, your hand is up. You can go ahead.
Yes, Tracy.
Yes, your hand is up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. Mine is a question to Wilson. He's at the same time saying that youths, according to the presentation, youths have been left out.
Stella, I think we lost you a bit. Okay, Stella, can you hear us? Okay, we may have lost Stella. So as we try to get her, as she tries to reconnect, I see Wangoi Mukame's hand is up. Wangoi, go ahead. Wangoi Mukame, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Thank you very much, Makori, for the good presentation. My concern is only one. You've said that victims of elections violence should be compensated and we should go back up to 2007. My question is, don't you think this will be opening an old can of worms, which will bring more negative impact than actually giving us a solution? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Wangoi. Wilson, please respond to that.
Thank you very much for that question, Wangoi. I gave the 207 as an example, but basically what I was suggesting is the compensation was part of the one way we can be able to help the people who are affected by post-election or, by example, political violence to heal. But I also mentioned something to do with giving them an opportunity to access education and sell access to land, healthcare. This is one way we can be able to ensure that at least we reconcile our country and have these people feeling like they have, or not just feeling like, but for them to feel like they have gotten justice after undergoing such heinous activities. But I not basically mean that we have to go back and look at the 2007, because that is one way of revisiting something that has already, or something that we are trying to heal from. But it's something that we should put as a law in a country. That should such kind of the issue, because what we are working on as young people, what we are pushing for is to work towards a peaceful, free, and fair election whereby we can be able to avoid such kind of anomalies. But in any case that it happens, we should have a structure as a country on how we respond to the victims of political violence. That is the only way we can be able to make a country heal. Thank you.
Thank you for that response, Wilson. Stella, I see your hand is up again. Would you like another chance to talk? Okay. I welcome the plenary to more contributions on the discussion. If you have a question for the presenter or the facilitator, if you want to give your opinion on the subject matter ensuring peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections, and especially the role of the youth in it, if you have a contribution towards the discussion, this is the time to give it. So you could do so either by raising your hand, I'll get to you and you'll be given a chance to talk. Alternatively, you could type in your question in the chat box and we'll be able to read this out loud. Emmanuel Buchichi, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Emmanuel Buchichi. I'm talking from Kakamega and currently the ANC youth leader, Kakamega County. Recently, we had election in Matungu, and the most people were affected were the youth. So my opinion first, if I can ask my question, is that you will get that the police are the one who provokes the youth. Whenever youth are seen anywhere with any caravan passing by the police, they believe that the youth are planning something wrong. So they will direct their tear gas and dismantle the group. My question is, as we are moving towards 2022, how is the country prepared not to use extra force or energy to tackle the youth, particularly from our security agents? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Emmanuel Buchichi. Robert Gore, go ahead.
Thank you very much for giving me this chance. Now it's just a comment. For us, I think for us to achieve a free violence election is that the IBC should do what they're supposed to do and what the law requires them to do. What do I mean by saying so? The thing is, the moment the IBC, the presiding officers, the moment they announce the person, then people think, or people know very well that that person didn't win. That is where the violence normally starts. So, for instance, in Kenya, during elections, you need, for example, hear people or youths beating each other, doing anything that is close to violence. But you need to hear the release of election, That is when the values begins. So if IBC can do their work, a lot of reforms have been made, but nothing happens. They normally announce the candidate that people think it's a compromise candidate, or rather the candidate for let me use the word that is now common, the deep state candidate. So for me, that's a comment that I like to put.
Thank you, Robert Gore. There was a lot of background noise from your end, but I hope the facilitator was able to get something from what you just said. Wilson, please respond to those before I go on to the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Robert Gore's was a suggestion and also a contribution on how we can ensure that we have peaceful election, because he said that the main cause of that, of violence, is basically whereby the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission fails to do their job very well. So he suggests that if only they can be able to do their job well, follow the procedures that have been put in place as per the Election Act number 24 of 2011, then we are going to have, or in one way or the other, avert the issue of political violence related to elections. Thank you very much for that, Robert Gore. Another question that was asked by Emmanuel Pichichi. Someone with an intervention?
No, go ahead.
So Emmanuel Pichichi said that if, for example, in Matungu, you realized that the police, they could see the youth moving in a caravan and they end up engaging or throwing tear gas to them because they made an assumption that the youth are violent. And is asking on how their country is prepared to avoid seeing the youth as violent and work towards having a peaceful engagement. So I've seen what the country has been doing recently in a number of areas whereby we, for example, the sporting activities whereby the police come up with their team and also the youth in a particular area, they intermit in a competition. And this is one way whereby the country is trying to make the police have a way of understanding the young people so that they can be able to structure a way of engagement that is harmonious without seeing each other as enemies. Though I believe we still have a challenge on that because it has not really covered all the parts of the country, and considering that some of them are manipulated by those in power in their favor, that the police ends up acting, instead of being agents of peace, they end up being agents of destruction. But if we continue engaging such kind of activities, in the long run, we'll have a way in which the police can be able to be friendly to the youth of this country. And then by so doing, we can have a peaceful election that is free and safe at all the times. But I agree we still have a challenge on that, which needs to be worked on. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson. John Draguna, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. My question is, how can we ensure that parties are developing what we call ideology? Because currently, currently the parties in Kenya do not have actual ideologies. We don't know if they are Marxist or they are promoting an ideology of a liberal ideology, or they are capitalist. Mostly they are just briefcase parties. How can we be able to push in this as the youth to ensure that parties are developing an image of an ideology? That is my question.
Thank you, Wilson.
Thank you very much, John Njuguna, for that question. So one thing we have to understand is that the development of party ideology is something that relates basically to our social structures, economic system of productions, and the political structures. So a party can work on its ideology by identifying itself by a particular social structure, or it focuses on an economic system of production and say, this is what we want to put forth as a party. Then call for the people to support the idea And then by so doing, they'll have identified an ideology that they believe in, so that should they get to power, that is what basically will focus on in bringing about change in a country. So it's basically looking at a particular social structure, economic system of production, and the political structures. That is where they can be able to shape their ideologies from. Don't know if you answered.
Thank you, Wilson. We shall take one more round of questions. So questions, opinions, contributions to the discussions. If you'd like to give any of those, please raise your hand and I shall give you the chance to talk. Alternatively, write it in the chat box and I shall be able to get to you. Emmanuel Buchichi, I see your hand is up again. Go ahead. Okay, Makrin Tiga, please go ahead. Makrin Tiga, your hand is up. Go ahead. Okay. Unless there's any other question, there's any other input, I will give this chance to Wilson to give his closing remarks and parting shots at this juncture. Wilson, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And I say thank you very much to all.
Let me get this from, sorry, Wilson, let me get this from Makrin before you give your parting shots.
Sorry, you had muted me. I was not able to unmute myself. I just have one simple and short question. Might be obvious, but it's not obvious to me. There are these old folks, old political folks that are already used in politics and violence, and they want to keep to keep on being in those positions. And I'll give an example. I will not say where I come from. In my constituency, I won't name the constituency, but they are the old folks, 2017, who harassed another young aspirant, to the point of a gunshot. This political aspirant, his son was shot to harass him from running or from competing with the old folks. And this is also bringing a hit to young people, even in my place, because the young people has ambitions, they want to vie, but these old folks are using also violence. What do you tell my constituency mates to do? Would we engage them or kill them, or what do we do? Because they are harassing us with guns, and we do not have those guns, and we want to also vie. What would you advise in such situation?
Wilson, go ahead and respond to that. Wilson, please unmute.
Thank you very much, Tracy. I can see there was a restriction from my end from unmuting. You can look at that. So in regards to the question by Makrin Tiga on how you can deal with the old folk who are harassing the young aspirants, I mentioned something, how we can avert political violence, because that is one area that brings about violence against young people, or whereby the young people are involved. And the point that I brought up is the legal and institutional reforms. which needs to be looked at critically by we as the young people within our party, so that we can have strong legal institutions and also push for reforms. Because when you look at the Political Parties Act 2011, it has a code of conduct, how politicians are supposed to behave when it comes to elections. The Election Act number 24 of 2011 as well has specifications on how aspirants are supposed to behave, and they have a way in which they resolve the disputes when it arises. So that is something that we need to work on as young people within our parties, so that at least we have these institutions being more strong to be able to handle such kind of the issues. And I believe once somebody reported the IPC because of harassment, there is a way in which they handle that one. So that is something that when young people are facing kind of the challenges, we need to rely on IEBC to protect us by asking them to comply to the specification on the Election Act and also as per the Constitution of Kenya. And again, as young people free and safe elections, if we can manage to talk to the young people, then they end up subscribing to the idea of us being peaceful, then automatically that one will be guaranteed that we will be able to support the young people and they'll not be put in such kind of the practice or anomalies. I hope you answered, Macrin.
Yes, you have. Thank you.
Okay, right before I give Wilson his chance to give his parting shot, just so that we ensure we haven't left anybody out, is there anybody with an input to the discussion, a question, a suggestion, an additional point to the currently ongoing discussion? Emmanuel Buchichi, your hand is up. Would you like to talk? Okay. Anybody with an input, just to make sure that we aren't leaving anybody out? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Makari Wilson, please go ahead and give your parting shots on the topic before we round up the meeting.
Thank you. I'm unmuted now. Thank you very much, Tracy, first of all, for organizing this thought-provoking engagement, whereby the young people have had a chance to discuss on ways we can be able to ensure that we have peaceful, safe, and non-violent elections. Considering that any violence that we engage in destabilizes our country and we're the people who are affected most as young people, and considering that we are the future of this country, whereby we need to protect every resource that we own as a country, then this is an engagement that came at the right time, considering that we are heading to elections and also possibly a referendum that is coming soon. So I therefore take this chance to say thank you as a Center for Multi-Party Democracy, and also to all who made the time to be in this meeting, and also for listening and also asking your questions. They have really, in one or the other, informed us on many ways we can be able to work towards creating a peaceful and safe country during and after or even before elections. Thank you very much. I'm truly grateful, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Wilson. As we wind up, I see Arnold saying that was a good presentation. Now I know ways to ensure peaceful and non-violent elections in my county, Nandi. Thanks. So participants, thank you all for being part of this meeting. Wilson Makari, thank you for taking us through the role of young people in ensuring peaceful, safe, and violence-free elections. That was an insightful presentation, well prepared, well articulated, and we're grateful for that. For everybody who's taken the time to participate in this particular discussion and in this particular meeting, we from the Center for Multi-Party Democracy Kenya say asante sana. Thank you for making the time for the same. We hope you've learned a thing or two. We hope you've taken home a thing or two. We as the youth are the largest population in Kenya, and generally in the world, the youth makes up the largest population. However, if you look at the political trends in our country, it's also the youth who are the biggest perpetrators and victims in politically motivated violence. So that speaks to us to say that there's a lot we can and should do to ensure that there's minimal or no electoral violence experienced. We need to break the cycle that after every general election, it's definite that there's a case of political violence perpetrated by the youth. So I would encourage all of us to be aware of this very fact. And in being aware, we are able to then move forward with the knowledge of what we can do to avoid getting ourselves in the mix-up of political violence. A lot has been said, so I shall leave it at that. From the Center for Multi-Party Democracy Kenya, we shall ensure that we provide safe spaces for these kind of conversations to continue going on, especially as we gear up towards a possible referendum and the 2022 general elections. For now, we wish you all the best. We hope that you enjoy the rest of the evening and your weekends, and please stay safe, and protect yourself from the virus. We wish you a lovely weekend and we shall see you soon. Thank you and goodbye.